Good morning to the EFF officials, members of the media, and the people of South Africa. The economic freedom fighters extend its heartfelt condolences to the Vatican, to the Catholic Church, and to the Catholics around the world on the passing of His Holiness Pope Francis. Pope Francis was not an ordinary leader. He rejected the distant and lavish traditions of his office and instead walked humbly among the poor and the oppressed. He was a pope who embraced the spirit of service, choosing a simpler life over luxury. Pope Francis traveled to Africa, visiting the war-torn countries of Sudan and the DRC as well as the Central African Republic, where he opened the holy door, bringing hope to the forgotten and the displaced. He spoke openly against poverty, inequality, colonialism, and the exploitation of Africa's people and resources. In one of his final acts of courage, Pope Francis raised his voice against the genocide unfolding in Gaza. He called for peace, condemned the slaughter of innocent civilians, and reminded the world that the lives of Palestinians are as sacred as any other. As we remember his life, let us never forget the people of Palestine and their resistance against the apartheid Israel regime. Our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the people of Palestine, and as South Africa, we must never retreat from our solidarity with Palestine, even in the face of intimidation by the USA. May the legacy of the Pope inspire us to build a more just, humane, and compassionate world. The Economic Freedom Fighters welcomes the decision of the Western Cape High Court handed down on the 27th April 2025, setting aside the illegally adopted 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals and suspending the implementation of the VAT increase from 15% to 15.5%. This decisive court order vindicates the principled stance the EFF has consistently taken to defend the Constitution, the rule of law, and the interests of the poor and working class against political expediency and executive overreach. This victory restores Parliament's constitutional powers as the legislative authority over the public finances, reaffirms the supremacy of the law, and crucially protects millions of South Africans, especially the poor and working class, from being further burdened by reckless and unjust VAT increase amidst an economic crisis. At a time when South Africans are already suffering under the unbearable burden of high cost of living, skyrocketing food prices, unaffordable electricity tariffs, and record petrol prices, the suspension of VAT increase is a necessary intervention against further economic suffocation. The EFF has long warned that the current Minister of Finance and the leadership of the National Treasury are incompetent, untrustworthy, and incapable of tabling a credible, believable, and lawful budget. From the onset, it was clear that they were detached from the economic realities faced by ordinary South Africans. The crisis began with the minister's catastrophic attempt to table the original 2025 budget on 19 February 2025. The budget collapsed under the weight of public and political rejection of the proposal to increase VAT by 2 percentage points and the refusal to implement the inflationary adjustment of income tax brackets. The EFF was among the first political parties to declare that the Minister of Finance failed to appreciate the depth of South Africa's economic crisis, even as he reluctantly considered that austerity budgeting had to end and rejected the first budget unconditionally. Unwilling to listen and arrogant, the minister returned to Parliament on 12 March 2025 with so-called revised budget. Yet the core proposal remained the same, a VAT increase, albeit now by 0.5% for the 2025-26 financial year. The EFF immediately rejected this revised budget, rightly identifying it as a shallow political compromise aimed at appeasing financial markets, not a genuine response to economic stagnation and mass unemployment. We maintain that the fiscal adjustment must not occur on the backs of the poor and the working class. We were clear. The budget tabled by the minister remains a proposal until Parliament adopts a lawful fiscal framework, division of revenue, appropriation bill, and associated revenue bills. Parliament has constitutional powers to amend and reject fiscal proposals. We were ready to submit comprehensive, concrete alternatives in the Standing Committee on Finance and Appropriations, which we did in the Standing Committee on Finance, to the ANC and to the Minister of Finance. Our proposals were aimed at building a developmental state capable of creating jobs and growing the economy without burdening the poor and working class through regressive taxes. We propose the following key measures. 1. Reject the VAT increase and protect poor and working class households. 2. Adjust personal income tax brackets by 4.5% to prevent bracket creep and protect wage earners. Increase corporate income tax from 27% to 28.5% in 2025-2026 and to 30.5% in 2026-2027, targeting highly profitable corporations. Introduce a wealth tax on underutilized and luxury land holdings to raise at least 7.5 billion annually. Implement an apartheid wealth tax on pre-1994 trust to generate a once-off revenue of 30 billion to 50 billion. Introduce an annual levy on inherited wealth exceeding 10 million, estimated to raise 10 to 20 billion annually. Allocated an additional 4 billion in 2025-2026 to strengthen SARS capacity to combat illicit financial flows and recover unpaid taxes. Launch a 512 billion fiscal stimulus program over 3 years to fund infrastructure, frontline employment, reindustrialization, and rural development. Amend the Division of Revenue Bill to increase local government funding without reducing essential allocations for health, education, and basic services in provinces. These proposals reflect a credible, progressive, and transformative approach to fiscal policy, unlike the National Treasury's austerity-driven framework that sought to balance the budget on the backs of the poor and working class. However, because the ANC no longer enjoys a majority in Parliament and its committees, it chose to undermine democracy and the law by steamrolling the 2025 fiscal framework through deceitful tactics on 1st April 2025. They colluded with the Inkatha Freedom Party, Action SA, BOSA, Rise Mzansi, the Patriotic Alliance, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, the Good Party, the National Colored Party, and Al-Jamaa to adopt the fiscal framework illegally, ignoring the clear requirements of Section 8, Subsection 4 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act of 2009. Without a valid fiscal framework, no budget process could lawfully proceed. Immediately after the unlawful meeting, on the very same day, the EFF sent a letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly, raising an urgent legal objection and demanding the withdrawal of the Standing Committee's report. The next day, 2nd April 2025, during the National Assembly sitting, we reiterated on the floor that the fiscal framework was adopted in an unprocedural and illegal manner. We made it clear that the proceeding will expose Parliament to constitutional invalidity, because we believe that had the process been followed, the ANC will not have had enough support to pass the budget. Despite these interventions, the Speaker herself, driven by political expediency, refused to act. Instead, she attempted to create an illegal workaround sending a letter to the Minister of Finance on 21st April 2025, suggesting that the fiscal framework was adopted with a condition that the minister should seek alternative revenue sources. This was an irrational and legally meaningless political maneuver. The law provides for no such conditional adoption of fiscal framework. The Speaker disgraced the office she occupies and compromised the independence of Parliament. Meanwhile, political parties that naively believed they could support the fiscal framework with conditions while hoping for side settlements to correct their bundler, exposed their desperation, ignorance of the budget process, and reckless hunger for positions. Their confusion has been made worse by ignorant propaganda such as the absurd nonsense published by some media houses, peddling an illusion that Parliament could separate revenue proposal from the fiscal framework and the National Treasury must remain independent to implement irrational fiscal policy without a law. It is shameful that individuals who do not understand even the basic principle of budgeting processes are entrusted with chairing the key parliamentary committees such as Scope and Standing Committee of Finance. Such political illiteracy threatens the constitutional order and brings Parliament into disrepute. Faced with this institutional betrayal, the EFF had no choice but to intervene through the courts. On 26 April 2025, we filed supplementary court papers in the Western Cape High Court. On 27 April 2025, the court delivered a landmark ruling. 1. Setting aside the illegally adopted fiscal framework and revenue proposals. 2. Suspending the VAT increase scheduled for 1st May 2025. 3. Restoring constitutional order to Parliament's budgeting process. This ruling is not just a victory for the EFF, it is a victory for the people of South Africa. It is a victory for the rule of law. It is a victory for the poor and working class who would have suffered greatly under the VAT increase. It is important to emphasize the court judgment does not validate the side shows and political chances that occurred outside Parliament by disparate parties seeking relevance. It is the EFF's strategic, legal, and parliamentary intervention that achieved this outcome and stopped the VAT increase. In light of this decisive judgment, the economic freedom fighters call for the immediate resignation of Finance Minister Ino Godongwana and the National Treasury Director General Duncan Peterson. These individuals have proven themselves incapable of formulating a lawful, credible, and developmental budget. They have lost the confidence of the people of South Africa, and the business community should not trust them. It is the business community that has spent billions on changing their VAT system for nothing and should pursue any means necessary to hold the government accountable. South Africa now faces an urgent task. A credible third budget for the 2026 financial year must be tabled by no later than July 2025. The current government must either deliver a lawful budget within this time frame or accept that its failure to do so will trigger a constitutional crisis leading to its collapse and fresh elections. The EFF stands ready to engage meaningfully and table substantive proposals to ensure the new budget focuses on economic recovery, industrialization, mass employment, and the restoration of public service. We will reject any attempts to impose budget cuts, austerity, or regressive taxation on the people of South Africa. We emphasize, while the VAT increase was a particular trigger, the entire 2025 budget, as formulated by the Minister of Finance, is fundamentally flawed. The National Treasury's neoliberal dogma, obsession with austerity, and blind loyalty to the white capitalist establishment have no place in South Africa's current economic realities. The EFF has consistently led from the front in Parliament and society. In the 7th Parliament, we recommended ourselves to be effective and constructive opposition. This is evident in our Back to School campaign by all elected public representatives, our superior contribution during the State of the Nation address debate, our exposition of corruption during the National Youth Development Agency interviews, our introduction of the student debt cancellation bill, our leadership in exposing illegal parliamentary process, and now our victory in resetting the 2025 budget process at a defining moment for South Africa. This makes us, from yesterday, the official opposition party in South Africa. The EFF will continue to act with strategic clarity, revolutionary discipline, and unwavering commitment to the poor and working class to defend, rebuild, and advance the struggle for economic freedom. We call on all political parties, civil society organizations, trade unions, and academic institutions to work with us in the next phase to rebuild the national budget in a way that serves all South Africans, not just the rich. Victory belongs to those who defend the Constitution, democracy, and the people, and not to those who sell them out for political survival. I thank you.